This is Alcohol Freedom Finders. This week we're joined by a Fellow of the Royal Society of Chemistry, which is definitely a first for us. Dr. Michelle Lynch is an expert in the field of sustainability, and while her work focuses her attention on experimental research to improve the future for us all, it was when she put her own life under the microscope and applied the same curiosity and experimentation to her relationship with alcohol that she improved the future for herself. Let's hear all about how she did it. Welcome to Alcohol Freedom Finders with me, Barry Condon, and my fantastic colleague, Justine Clark. Today, we're excited to have with us Dr. Michelle Lynch, who is a business owner in the sustainable technologies field and who is an exponent for the alcohol freedom lifestyle and is taking on a new phase of her life, moving around the world, and is joining us today from Muscat, where potentially she might be taking up her primary residence. So welcome to you, Michelle. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
And I don't know the first thing about Muscat, so I have to hear about that too. But first of all, and most importantly, what led you to becoming alcohol free? And tell us about your journey. How did you end up where you are?
Sure. And I think it's fair to say that I never had a straightforward relationship with alcohol. It was something that there was a little bit of a love-hate relationship with it. But sometimes I drank it and I felt better and I felt happier, and the social energy and glow that you might expect from it. And other times when it just became a bit of a burden. And I think that was the case for a long time, actually, for almost the entire journey with it. And I was always attempting to have some long breaks from it. And I was that kind of person in terms of the drinking passions. I would have very long breaks from it. But when I did drink it, it didn't have this sort of kind of feeling of it's just going to be something I have one drink or two drinks and then I feel content and I go away from it. It never left a feeling of contentment. And so it kind of became an issue that it became too many drinks at one time, and then all the negative impacts of that. And yeah, that kind of went on for a long time prior to me kind of getting to the point, car hitting the brakes or kind of slowing down and pressing the brakes and saying, actually, I might like to just stop.
That's interesting. I mean, I've not thought of it like that before. But you're right. The way that alcohol is something that never satisfies. It's kind of an innate thing in dopamine itself that is kind of the driver of why we drink. Is dopamine is we sort of think of it as the reward, but it's actually more of a reminder to do more. And it's it motivates us to keep going, and it's meant to be more of a thing that's a survival mechanism for things that are scarce. But when alcohol's everywhere, it can be something that we latch onto and can be very dangerous. So when did you decide, okay, I need to do something different or take a different approach, or how did you get into the change itself?
So it really came about just before the pandemic began, and I was on a huge health drive actually, and I hadn't had alcohol for months, and this was in 2020, and I was kind of really fit and really happy and healthy. And then I put my house up for sale, made a relocation from London to the West Midlands. And it was multiple things that were stressful at the same time and complications that I wasn't expecting with that move, bereavements and other things going on. That once I started drinking again, the strange thing is that after long periods of not drinking, the rebound effect was quite pronounced. And it's something I really noticed over those following years when I was also, because I was in my late 40s, perimenopausal and then menopausal. And I think that, there's some evidence, that can affect all these neurotransmitter levels. And we haven't really linked, or I hadn't linked hormones as very neurotransmitters until recently when I did work around it. But essentially, this kind of stopping and starting was getting much more pronounced. And I was noticing and thinking, that's really strange how the signals coming to me are getting stronger every time I try to stop. So actually, I'm probably just going to have to completely stop. And that's what led me to start looking into people who don't drink at all. So I looked at a lot of Instagram things. I read books by people who stopped drinking. I read books by people who were very frank and honest about being childhood alcoholics or people with alcohol use disorder. And so I learned a lot about their before and after. And what really got me actually was this before and after thing, before and after photos, before and after stories. And I looked at it and said, I want a before and an after story, and I particularly want my after story.
Wow, I love that so much. And I keep thinking of that, is it Mick Jagger's song, I Can't Get No Satisfaction? And it's like, yeah, I really resonate with what you're saying there, because, you know, when you start, I reckon as soon as you realise that this isn't very satisfying and you're not quite getting enough and that you're going to need more, as soon as that starts being a thought that you have around any substance, but alcohol in this instance, I think it's game over. I think it's diminishing returns. And I noticed as well after an 18-month break, when I went back to it, that it was, you know, I knew then and there that there was never going to be enough that was going to make me feel satisfied. It was never going to do what it used to do, and that there was going to have to be a different way forward. So how did you find your way forward this time that stuck?
It was a mixture of really leaning into the curiosity. So kind of maybe a year and a half before I stopped, I was reading books, listening to audiobooks and other things that described other people's journeys. And I started to really lean into that. What would it be like if I didn't drink at all? And then looking at lots of posts and seeing that other people were showing what they'd learned once they stopped drinking, all the things they'd learned, all the things they'd improved. And so on the one hand, that was going on. And then on the other hand, I was looking at me, I was looking at my body, I was looking at my ability to work, all of it, you know, kind of suboptimal to say the least, and at the heaviest weight I'd ever been in 2022. And also things like getting a croaky voice because the weight and the alcohol was things like drying my throat. And I need to train. For one of my jobs is a trainer, and 15 minutes into a 5-hour session, my voice was getting dry and croaky. So it had become practically, it was unworkable. It was having a severe impact on my physical and mental health. And I could see a way forward, and I could see what was on the other side. And so I started looking at it as problems on this side of the equations and benefits on the other side. And so that's what made me jump through the portal and say, well, I'm not going back there, because even though there's all these little triggers and things saying, oh, wouldn't it be nice? Don't you remember that pub? Don't you remember this glass? Don't you remember that wine you liked? And these little triggers, and look at these pretty bones on this bottle. And if your friend's having fun with this, what are you doing? Come back to us, come back. And it's like, no, I know it's not real. So got grounded in reality and stayed on the safe side of the portal.
That's brilliant. And so how was that? Did you just sort of from one day to the next in the end, you know, did you sort of draw a line in the sand, okay, today, that's it, I'm done? Or was it a gradual thing from then on?
It was like stop starts. It was a series of in 2022. So I stopped for 3 months, then went back, and it immediately became a problem within a day. It's like, it was just strange how I didn't go back and have one drink. I went back and I had maybe 12 drinks over that weekend. I said, well, I haven't drunk for months. Surely my tolerance and everything would have adjusted, and I'd only have one. But no, it's this vicious rebound. And then it was like, okay, I'll stop again. And then I think there were maybe 2 more times in 2022, ending in, it was around August, and then another 3-week break, one conference, one sip of a glass of wine led to another 2 bottles that weekend. And then I woke up on Saturday the morning, September 10th, and said, that's it, no more, absolutely no more. I can't make this work, I can't moderate, I can't adjust or do any of those magical things in which to be able to do. So I'm done. And that was my I'm done moment. And it's unthinkable for me now to go back and do it again. It's not to say it wouldn't ever happen, because I sense it sometimes. I sense it like just kind of like not, it's almost like it's kind of trying to find a weak point. It's going around like this kind of circumference and trying to find a little weak point to get in. Yeah, it's really creepy when I think of it like that. So I'm aware, and I monitor my triggers, but I couldn't ever see myself wanting willingly to go back to that.
I love the way that you're talking about this. 'Cause I really, when you're talking, I can really feel myself having those thoughts. You know, it's like, I could just reach out and get that. I could just stop at that bottle shop and buy that wine just as easy. I could actually hold a wine glass that's full of, with that cold wine in it, and I could just drink it. I know what it tastes like. It's almost like a fear and a repulsion and an excitement, and it reminds me of that standing up on the edge of a of a height and going, I could actually go. You know, it's like, ugh, yeah. But it's actually scarier. It's scarier than being on a cliff top because it's so, it could come in the room at any minute. It's always, you know, it's ever present once alcohol's been there. And I don't think people realise, because we've all drunk by auto enrolment for our whole lives. You know, since we're young adults, it's been in every social situation, at every opportunity. So we're actually having to choose to say no rather than the other way round. So I love how you're talking about that. So if you're looking to take back control of your drinking, why don't you join our Alcohol Freedom Finders 30-day group program? It's a great place to start because we approach it as an experiment rather than a challenge. Whereas, as well as getting a great detox, you learn the science and the psychology about why you're drunk in the first place. So whether you want to stop altogether or just become a more mindful and moderate drinker, why don't you give it a crack? Use the link in the show notes to sign up to our next Alcohol Freedom Finders 30-day program, and you won't regret it, because no one ever woke up in the morning and said, I wish I'd had more to drink last night, did they? Now, back to the episode. Let's talk about some positive things now. Let's talk about, like, you have done this. What's been on the other side of this now? What are some of the positives that you've experienced?
So, yeah, lots of positives. Everything has just got so much better. I studied for a battery MBA, successfully studied over kind of 2-3 months, gained a battery MBA, expanded my business, real desire to expand my training business. That's one of the most satisfying things for me, is teaching people and mentoring and preparing people for their careers. So I've been very successful in the last 18 months expanding that. I'm traveling. I obviously sold my property in the UK, and this has been something I wanted to do for kind of several years, and finally kind of made it. All the things are in storage. I'm now traveling around and investigating where else I might like to stay for a few months of the year and meeting new people. And the idea really was to kind of be exposed to lots of different viewpoints and cultures and places, because perhaps one of the things that alcohol is very good at doing is isolating us, telling us not to expand our world and to kind of, you know, reduce our expectations. That might not be the case for everyone. I know lots of people travel and they have alcohol in lots of different countries, but it doesn't work for everyone. So, yeah, I've been able to fulfill a lot of long-term ambitions since I stopped drinking.
And have you found it easy to interact with these new people? You know, do people ask you, you know, oh, do you not drink, or why do you not drink? And have you found an easy way to deal with that, or was that something you had to learn?
Well, it's an interesting one, because initially, and I thought a lot of people breathed a sigh of relief that I didn't drink anymore, but some people were kind of, well, can't you just have a little? Can't you just have 2? And I was like, well, what does 2 mean? And I really sort of invite people to think about what they're saying a bit more now when they say just have 2, because 2 went from being 2 units to being 2 glasses. And we know that those glasses now are sometimes 250 mils. So 2 is actually 6 units at least. Yeah, it can be 6 units. So no, I don't buy into this idea that, you know, I can't have 2. So I had to explain that to people, and some people they distance themselves for that reason, which is fine. That's their decision. And so one of the challenges is to get involved with people who are happy to have times when, and I don't mind if people drink around me. I really don't have a problem with it. But obviously it is different. So yeah, it's changed my social life. I do interact with people who are not drinking. I prefer, in honesty, to do that. And it's interesting when I come to regions where it's not a popular part of the culture, to explain that even though I'm a Western lady, that when I come into a hotel, I don't want to be directed to the bar, that I actually want to sit in the part of the hotel and to be into the parts where there's no alcohol being drunk. So it is an image that as Western people we have, that we drink alcohol. And it takes some explaining that actually not everybody does, and I'm quite happy not to.
Isn't that fascinating that it's a Western culture thing as well, and that as travellers, other cultures identify us as drinkers? They must just think that we are vulgar and all those, you know, which we are, I think. But anyway, enough about that. I'm just interested to know now that you're on the other side, and I think people who are still toying with the idea of moderation or stopping entirely, for you is something that's surprising that you didn't realize would happen for you on the other side. For me, it is, I've really noticed how nature seems, I used to feel like I was walking in nature, and I I'm walking in nature, that's nice. But I didn't notice how actually nature comes and communicates to you through, rippling water or a breeze in a leaf. Because we are not present to the noise in our head about, oh, I need a drink, or should go and get a drink, or I've got a hangover. There's more space for nature to come in and be soothing. What surprises have there been for you in your life that you didn't expect?
Yes, as we're both hikers, I can really appreciate that feeling of being able to soak up nature. And even, I notice animals a lot more, actually. I notice how animals communicate, and birds, and, feeling more connected to, nature and wildlife. And that's wonderful. It was also something that prompted me to stop was this promise that you could pick up a glass of water, or a glass of a non-alcoholic drink, and enjoy it just as much and relax just as much. And I had to experience it to believe it, but it's just so true, and it's just so funny that it maybe it's a bit like when you stop smoking. And I've never really smoked, but it's that feeling of just holding a pen or something. It is true that I can have a lovely non-alcoholic drink and come away feeling just as relaxed. But it was all the other bits of the experience besides the alcohol that were actually making it nice. So that was a pleasant surprise. And so that's something I would invite anybody who's curious to think about. What else? There's also the ability to see my personality as it is without alcohol, and to see my traits, because you can't blame alcohol for anything anymore. You can't attribute things to alcohol anymore. So whatever I'm like, and my thought processes and my behaviour all has to be attributed to something else. And it wasn't long, interestingly, after I stopped drinking, that I found out that I had combined ADHD, and after that I had autistic traits. So now I'm having to go back, and alcohol isn't really the main thing anymore. It's going back and looking at my life as framing everything from that perspective, and seeing that actually a lot of the struggles I had weren't so alcohol wasn't cause. It was actually one of a kind of a bad solution to the right problem. But now I get the ability to go away and find the right, not necessarily solutions, but the lifestyle and confidence in being who I am. So I don't apologize for who I am anymore. I don't tell people, well, the fact that I'm interested in 100 different things, and the fact that I'll go very deep when I do look at things, I'm not going to apologize for that anymore. It's me, and I can be flexible, but I'm not going to use a substance or do something to mask who I am.
I love that. And I think that there's a lot of new understanding now around neurodivergency, and also its relationship to to drinking. Have you looked at that yourself? Have you looked at maybe now looking back? As you said, the idea often that drink is a solution, a bad solution perhaps, but it's not necessarily the problem. People think, I've got a drink problem. Well, no, the problem is maybe something else. Yeah. And have you been able to sort of link that to the neurodivergency that you're now becoming aware of?
Yeah, I think that, and I'm not obviously any kind of expert on neuroscience or anything like this. Initial understanding is that, in some people who are neurodivergent or have ADHD, that there is science around the dopamine mechanisms not working optimally, and other neurotransmitters like norepinephrine. And the fact that as you get older, especially as a woman, when you reach the perimenopause and menopause, that your neurotransmitters are changing quite radically. So people think of us, a lady at my age, as having hormone changes, but actually the hormones and things like dopamine are working together in tandem. So what I learned was that the neurodivergence, the stage of my life, all of that was going to play to kind of push my cravings. And so it was another good reason to stop drinking, but also to look at what I can do to manage those and what can I do to balance them. So with a mixture of therapies and medications and lifestyle to get a better solution to managing brain chemistry. And yeah, so it's great to be in that position of awareness and to understand why it's so important not to do things that will push my brain chemistry and my hormones and neurotransmitters into a complete state of imbalance. That's just not good for me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Personally, I found it so frustrating as a well-being therapist and someone who'd had, illness in my childhood and beyond. Why would I be doing something that was making me feel unwell? And I knew it was making me feel unwell. I mean, we all know that a hangover is us being unwell. But I felt like I was not, you know how you've got that feeling that if only I could do that one thing, then everything would be okay. Well, now I've done that one thing. I've done the one thing. So like you said earlier, everything can be okay. And I wanted to ask you, how does it play forward? Because now all of a sudden I'm playing it forward. I'm going, there's nothing to stop me living a really long, healthy life, because everything I do now is proactively doing things like, well, what can I eat that's going to improve things? What can I listen to that's going to improve? Like I'm not saying I'm some kind of fully formed, perfect creature. I do love my chocolate and I will eat it. And I still have aches and pains, but I feel like I can see the path ahead now and have some chance of following it somewhere. What about you, playing it forward? Where do you see yourself heading that maybe you didn't think possible in the past?
It's a mixture of, on one hand, looking at what I want to achieve and going for it and having the means and the energy and the clarity in my thinking to achieve it. But it's also getting rid of that overconfidence and over-optimism that you sometimes have. Like, I think I saw a meme or an internet post once that said, like, with alcohol, you'll create all kinds of dreams that you think you can achieve. And then when you're sober, you'll realize you weren't achieving any of them, but you might have fewer and you might have less kind of unrealistic dreams. You'll have realistic dreams when you'll be able to achieve those. I think that's the way I'm seeing it, that I'm actually trying to remove my overwhelm, because overwhelm was part of my issues in the past, but because I like to look at so many different things and I'm interested, one of the downsides to that is that you can easily get overwhelmed. So I have sort of 2 or 3 top realistic ambitions, like training and kind of learning more about specific topics and just being content. So actually being content to have fewer things on my radar, but to do them well. And alongside that, to have a nice life, to have a good work-life balance. So, going out in nature more, enjoying some more hobbies, taking up writing. I like to write. I like to blog. And so trying to get a bit more of a life-work balance as well.
To circle back to what you said about going, I just want to keep things, do less because I suffer with overwhelm. But you're telling me that you're living in Muscat and that you want to be able to travel from place to place and you're writing, and actually you're achieving far more possibly than you could ever have imagined. And you're thinking that that's not doing much.
Yeah, yes, indeed. And it's one of the things that, I just have so many things that I want to do, and I want to do just enough of them that makes life fun without being overwhelmed. So one of the things I have is like, try to pack a case, and getting from one place to another without losing things or forgetting things and kind of having too much with me, and then still thinking, I still don't have that thing with me that I wanted. So one of the funny things about moving around is having to get used to not having so much stuff with you, which is, if you're used to having everything in a house and everything in its right place, then that's something to get used to.
I have to say,
but I'm sure that
to say that I literally just moved countries and I spent 6 months waiting for all of my shipping to come over. And hand on heart, the week before it arrived, I'm like, I don't care if none of that stuff arrives. I just don't need the stuff anymore. And I think that's got a good analogy for alcohol as well, that actually it is the equivalent of having lots of stuff around us, because it sort of packs us in nice and tightly into a little mental box. And actually we don't need this stuff anymore.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's true. And even like, I'm talking about going from a house, so like a 3-bedroom house, to a suitcase. So, 30 kilos of belongings coming with you is still quite a lot to take around frequently. But 30 kilos of belongings versus an entire house. So, yeah, we do tend to cluster our lives up a lot and to lose a lot of energy, all that energy leakage to places that's really unproductive. So what I'm trying to do is have energy that's well used, and enough left over to do all the work, all the self-care. So I'm sure as a wellbeing therapist, Justine, you can understand that if you use 99 or 105% of your energy on work and on travel, what do you have left over to look after yourself? And actually, sometimes I think, isn't there something about hungry? It's HALT. It's hungry, angry, lonely, tired, isn't it? The 4 reasons why people just go and have a drink, because they're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And that's what you get if you're overwhelmed. So for me, that's a real part of my self-care, is to try to leave a good 20% or a chunk of energy for just relaxing and taking care of myself.
Great, and I think that's part of the difficulty, or for me, it was the main difficulty. That illusion that it does give you that relief briefly, and is actually sort of spiraling you down. But to give the space for other things to fulfill you and give other areas of life a chance to give you that enjoyment is counterintuitive, because my only relief at the end of the day is to have a drink and then I can relax, or the only way I can feel confident enough to be in public or be with people and socialize or do a certain thing can be to have a couple of drinks, and then I can, be the person that I think I ought to be. To step away from that feels very counterintuitive, but when you do, it gives space for you to be that more authentic person and feel at genuine confidence. How have you now, how do you now feel in yourself confidence-wise? Do you feel more confident or more comfortable in social situations, for instance?
I think I'm more aware of my discomfort in social situations, which, even though it doesn't sound positive, is better to know that and to do something about it than to pretend for the rest of your life that you're comfortable and use a drink of alcohol or something and to kind of not be genuine. So I'm living a genuine life, which is actually, I'm going to turn down 90% of the social occasions I'm offered. And also to really enjoy my time alone. And I really do enjoy it because, I like to research, and I actually would really like to just take up painting. I was never something I was traditionally associated with being very good at, but I really enjoy art and culture. So, I'd be quite happy instead of going out to just sit and draw and paint or write or listen to music. And I love music as well, and I love singing. So there's multiple ways to get to deal with the HALT factors. And so without alcohol, I'm free to kind of go around and try them all. And I might try things and go, actually, that one's not, end up with focus on things that have a higher kind of joy benefit. Because really what we want out of life is joy and contentment. And that chart, there's a chart from, I'm sure you know, the lady Jen Lee Hurst, where she shows this chart of what happens to your dopamine when you drink, and it's spiking up a huge spike and then this huge long tail of suboptimal, as opposed to finding things that just give you many enjoyment moments, many moments of joy all day long. I mean, who can resist many moments of joy all day long rather than hassle and stress all day long and a drink at night?
I couldn't.
That's how I like to look at it.
And you speak about painting, you speak about music. Well, painting and drawing releases a hormone we don't get elsewhere, which is the joy of learning how to make mistakes and then feel that it's coming along. I think it's acetylcholine is that the hormone? It's Italian word for it is pentamente, which is the movement of making mistakes, actually creating something organic and beautiful. My art teacher will tell me off, I haven't said it right, but anyway. And then the second one, of course, with singing and humming and chanting, it's all about resetting the vagus nerve, which is our social engagement part of our nervous system that naturally is going to elevate us and keep us in connection. So the things you're mentioning genuinely are going to make us feel better. So rather than chasing something that is going to only make us feel poorly in the long run, is a no-brainer. Well, it is for us three, and I hope more people can get on board along with us. And we like to wrap up by asking one final question, which is, may be difficult, which is, what 3 words resonate most for you about being an alcohol freedom finder?
Yeah, this was a fun one because I had so many. I'm sure you can imagine what I come up with. So I ended up with awareness, energy, and boundaries. Those are my 3.
Yeah, I mean, do
Yeah.
you want to expand on those?
So the awareness is kind of awareness of my standards, of my values, and we didn't sort of go into it at all. But actually, I understand my value system now much better than I ever did, and I set boundaries and standards much better than I ever did. And I will communicate them and say this is okay for me, this is not okay for me. But somebody severely violates my boundaries and behaves in a way that I don't think is commensurate with good professional or good friendship, then I will step away from it. And I'm quite happy to close doors and say, this isn't for me right now, unless something changes. But the awareness is also, of how I feel, my triggers. I'm very aware of my triggers and managing them and either relieving myself from situations or kind of doing some sort of self-soothing. So that would be kind of the awareness, probably the awareness and the boundaries together, actually. But the energy is, as we've spoken about, you have so much more energy and so many more possibilities of doing nice things with it. So, those are the 3 things for today at this moment. Those are the 3 that I'd stick
And
with.
you get to choose what you expend your energy on rather than it being chosen for you. Because you're sort of you're pre-selecting that my energy is going to go here and then it's going to go here. So I'm going to have to go here. Whereas now we can choose I'm feeling a little bit depleted. It's time to rest. Or, I've got a bit more energy than I thought. What should I do for the next half hour? That is a game changer. Energy. I love that. That's such a great word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would honestly say to people, don't ever worry about filling your time, because it's a funny thing that people say to you, well, what do you do if you're not drinking? It's like 100 things that I always wanted to do. So I think it's getting over that in sort of kind of embarrassment to say to people, I'm not going to drink, that you might initially have, and then sort of showing, you show, don't tell. I've clearly shown in the last 2 years how much nicer my life is and how happy I am and better choices I'm making. So, it's working. So that's all I could really say.
Great. Well, Michelle, it's been great talking to you. If people are interested in finding out more about you or sustainable technologies and how you might be able to mentor them or tell them a bit about Muscat, where can people get hold of you?
So they can follow me on LinkedIn if they like. They can follow my company as Enable Teacher. So if you look for me or for Enable Teacher on LinkedIn, you can find me there. Or you can find me on socials as Misha Bronner. So Misha Bronner. That's on Instagram and Threads, the best ones.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Great, thanks very much.
And I actually feel like we could be go on and talk for hours. So thanks so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.